Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wellness Wednesdays with Stephanie. I am Stephanie Buckland, your host. I am so excited to be interviewing my friend and colleague, Jon Bui, today. Jon, thank you so much for coming. This is super exciting.
Thank you.
I'm so delighted to get into this conversation because I feel like what you do is a very unique service, but also like people really need this. So, can you give our audience a little introduction about what you do and why you do it and how really does this magic show up in the world? So, let them have it.
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Jon Bui. I am the founder of the Negotiate Apology Project. And what I do essentially is I teach people how to say sorry. I teach people how to apologize. I've been doing this for about a year. And the reason why I do it is because I believe that most of our problems can be resolved with our words. And I think the power to resolve our problems are within us. And so I want to help people bring out that ability to problem solve, to communicate, and to, resolve their issues and live within the best versions of their relationships through their own hands, through their own power.
I love it. So, what is it that led you to get into this? So, what was kind of like the guiding light that led you into this business?
Oof, all right. So we're starting off the loaded questions. I like that. So I think it's really a twofold answer, right? So the first, I guess my first part of the answer is it started with me personally. I'm gonna be like not PG for a second here. Growing up, I really couldn't apologize for shit, right? I had a very hard time, not just simply verbalizing accountability. I had a hard time even thinking about accountability, right? I had a hard time like associating my part in harm, in fault of damage I inflict on other people, I have a really hard time like associating myself in that dynamic. And as a result, I never took responsibility for a lot of my things. Unfortunately, as got older and older, it really started affecting my relationships, right?
Mm.
People were rightfully deciding like, well, I don't want to hang out with this asshole. I don't want to be associated with him because he can never be accountable. So I started having relationships, friendships just kind of like splinter and break apart, and that's really, but that's normal, right? That's part of life. People, a lot of relationships kind of hinge on a cost benefit analysis. Or is this person bringing more, value to my life? If not, then, it might not be like a big fight that breaks everything apart. It might just simply be like less and less phone calls, less text messages until one day you realize like this person is really no longer there. So that's really why I started, really emphasizing the accountability and trust building aspect of my life because I know what it's like to be in a situation or to have the personal habits that cause, frayed relationships. So that's the first part of my answer. The second part of my answer as to why I started this was because I see that in a lot of other people, right? I see a lot of people in the same situation who want things to be different with the people they care about, but they don't know where to start. And I want to see people succeed. I want to see people happy. I want to see people, have meaningful relationships with others. So I really started this for those reasons.
Beautiful. Beautiful. You and I have a lot in common with that because I really do feel that people don't, they're certainly not born with the tools and skills that they need to survive in life,
Totally.
and we learn things growing up, but we might learn things from a very skewed perspective from our parents on how to interact in life. And we may not have the right skill set to enter the world and properly navigate through relationships
Mhm.
and things like that. So I think what you're doing is really important.
Yeah,
And
and
I
I'll
commend
interrupt you
you. I
right
think it's
there as
amazing.
well because you mentioned the skill sets we learned from our parents, right? To further expound upon what I said about me not being able to apologize for anything, that was a learned skill I got from my folks who never apologized for anything. We had a very rigid hierarchy in our family, and I'm sure a lot of people could relate. Like there's the dad who never apologized for anything because he can't ever be wrong, as the leader of the family. Then it kind of trickles down. Apologies do not trickle down. They only come up. And so part of my journey was having to deprogram myself, from those learned habits, from that learned worldview that was essentially ingrained in me at a very young age.
Absolutely, yeah. I had a similar experience actually. My mom could never apologize. So I had to learn how to say I'm sorry and how to mean it. And that was something very interestingly, just the other day, I was talking with my partner about this, that if you say sorry and you continue the same behavior, then you weren't really sorry.
Hmm.
So there's a learning experience from an apology where you really have to mean what you say and follow through. And that's where the accountability piece comes in. Because once you've said, I'm sorry for this action, if you continue that same action and you continue the same behavior, then you're basically saying, I wasn't really sorry, but I didn't really mean that, and that I think that's an important lesson in
Yeah,
apologizing, you know? Yeah. Um,
yeah,
so, I mean, your work is very much about relationships. It's about having healthy relationships, which, from the perspective of, being a wellness practitioner, healthy relationships are kind of the way that we navigate through life, right?
absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, right, what do we have? What do we really have other than our relationships, right? Like it's kind of played out, but the idea that like you can't take your money with you, you can't take, your accomplishments with you. Um, the only things that help you get to the end of the finish line, the end of your life, are the people, right? I'm not gonna be on my deathbed thinking about like, man, just all that money I made or all that money I saved, or whatever, all those titles I earned. I'm not
Right.
thinking about that. I'm thinking about the people, right? And the
The
people,
relationships.
yep, the people who walked alongside us in this lifetime of ours, they're the ones that give flavor to the journey of life. They're the ones that make these things meaningful. They're the folks that you reflect on, when you think about like, so what did it all mean, right? And then this person is going to give you context to that answer. This person is going to give you context to like it meant my interactions with this person, my relationship with this person, the trust and the love and so on and so forth I share with this person. That's life is all about relationships. We do not go through this thing alone. And even if you're more solitary like myself, right? There's always that relationship with yourself.
True.
So
Absolutely. It's,
relationships.
one of the most important thing I think that I've learned as a wellness practitioner in this industry is that we need to learn how to be self-compassionate and
Hmm.
self-forgiving and allow us individually to feel okay with ourselves as we navigate through the world. Because if you're coming from a place of, I don't believe in myself, I'm not worthy, I hate myself, all of those, very self-deprecating conversations you have internally with yourself, if you come from that place and you're trying to help other people, then you're basically projecting what they're not doing because you're not doing it. It's super
Yes.
interesting that interaction between the way that we work in our internal world and how we project to the rest of the world. Oh my goodness. I mean, this is a very yummy conversation because of that, because there's so much to it.
Yeah, this is
Um,
quickly going to turn to therapy.
right? So talk me through how you do your service. So you mostly work with organizations, right?
Correct. I mean, I work with individuals too, but my primary focus on organizations because I believe the solution should be implemented on a large scale. I think we would have a better society if everyone were to know how to apologize. And, it starts with organizations and how we interact within those organizations. Because what are orgs if not a bunch of interconnected individual relationships? Um,
Definitely.
whether you're part of, an official organization like a professional company, or you're part of an association, or just merely a community member, it's all about how to interact and communicate within the context of who you are in that organization. But yeah, let me go back. Let me backtrack a little bit and talk about how it works and where the magic comes from. So I'll start with my background. My background is in the law. I graduated from Lewis and Clark Law School, 2019. I don't practice law, but what I do is I teach people how to use the same negotiation skills and tools and help people implement that into their communication, in their apologies, to help them be more solutions oriented, to be more persuasive, and to help express, their solutions across to the person that they have hurt so that they could work
Hmm.
together towards resolving an issue. So my philosophy is that an apology is a negotiation for forgiveness, right? And to get
Hmm.
something from someone, generally what you want to do is you want to give them a strong reason to give you what you desire. Um, and so that's why I call my, work the negotiated apology because this is how I approach the issue of apologies. I'm the only person in the world actually who is doing it this way. So I know that when people think about apologies, a lot of people get turned off because they're like, well, it's too emotional, like it's gonna be a bunch of crying, it's gonna be a bunch of groveling, begging. If that's what you think, then I think you're doing apologies incorrectly, right? Apologies aren't meant to be a dog and pony show where you're whipping yourself for the satisfaction of the other person. You're not crying, you're not begging, you're not groveling, you're not making promises that you can't keep. You are
Hmm.
strategically approaching a conversation in such a way that the mutual outcome for everyone is going to be a win-win, right? So, and this surprises a lot of people when they hear me approach apologies from this direction because the main thing I want to give people is structure, a
Hmm.
communication structure, an information gathering structure, a problem solving structure, right? Um, and let me know if I'm talking too much.
No, no, you're fine.
Okay,
Continue.
yeah, because one of the biggest issues when it comes to people apologizing is simply not, messing up the apology. That's something we worry about later. The first thing we worry about is whether people are going to apologize at all, whether they're going to make that attempt at all. And so,
Hmm.
in surveys that I've conducted, the three top reasons why people fail to apologize, we're not talking about messed up apologies yet, we're just talking about failing to apologize. The top three reasons are people don't know where to start, they don't have the confidence in themselves to go through the process, or they fear the outcome. And those are
Hmm.
three things that paralyze people into place to keep them from even making an effort, right?
Wow.
So when I talk about giving people structure, giving them tools, it really is just that, right? I want to empower you to feel that this is not something that will overwhelm you, right? This is something I can do. I have the communication tools for this. I have the problem solving tools for this. I don't have to be scared of being put in this situation, and I can overcome, the analysis paralysis that comes with this perceived overly emotional situation.
Hmm. That's awesome. So skill sets, it's basically about building healthy skill sets, right?
Absolutely. And like any
I love it.
skill, you get better with practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned very briefly about trust building, and I think that's really the one of the whys of why apologies are so important in relationships. When you are in any kind of relationship and you cannot take accountability, you can't take responsibility for your actions, and you end up hurting someone, either emotionally by traumatizing them, or even like hurting someone from the perspective of business. Maybe, it's lack of communication that led to some kind of discourse in the business relations. Then there needs to be an apology there. Otherwise, you burn that bridge, right?
Absolutely.
You lose trust and you burn a bridge. So when we really get down to it, knowing how to apologize, I think, is one of the biggest things that has allowed people to navigate through relationships over the centuries. I mean, we need to be able to hold each other accountable. And I think that, we're asking people to step up. and to be more responsible for the way that they act in the world and how they treat
Absolutely.
each other. And I mean, that's huge. I totally agree with you. More people could apologize, we'd have a healthier like world.
Absolutely. I mean, I happen to think that a lot of people, when they go out into the world and they're just like being nasty, it's because they have something going on in their own life that causes them
Hmm.
to take it out on other people. So, like you said, if more people were able to be accountable with the harm that they do, you're saving someone else heartache, from that, splash damage,
Right,
like
right.
general bad attitude later, down the line. But
Yeah.
yes, I mean, communication, right? It's very important, and I want everyone listening to understand, right, that it's okay not to be perfect. Like I'm hella not perfect. I am so not perfect. But being in a relationship with someone, friendship, professional relationship, romantic relationship, etc., it's not about being perfect, right? You're never going to be in some sort of relationship where you will never hurt anyone. And I think like trying to live up to the idea that you'll be perfect and you'll never be put in the place of like being the harm doer. I think that's actually pretty dangerous
Mm,
for the relationship. It's dangerous for you
yeah,
to kind of just always be on that crazy, like I have to be perfect mindset. It's going to do a lot more harm for you to be in that
right.
headspace. The question is, do you have the ability to kind of manage and fix things as these inevitable harms come up, right?
Yep.
Do you have the communication skills to address things and to make sure that the harms that do come up are not going to be things that destroy your relationships? I categorize harms in, like really bad harms in two
Hmm.
categories, right? So the first category I call aggregate harms, which is death by a thousand cuts. You do things to hurt people, you never address them. So the lingering damage of the harm continues forward. It might not be in a relationship breaking harm, but you add all that stuff on top of each other, and it might not be related. It might be irrelevant types of harms, but one day people will be like, you know what? This person's not worth it.
Yeah,
Some straw will break the camel's back. And then the other type
yeah,
of harm, obviously, is, the catastrophic harms, where you do something to someone and that is like so egregious, so damaging that immediately puts the relationship at risk. Um,
right, right.
and it's all about what do you do when the going gets tough?
That is the question, isn't it? So, what can we do? So, from your perspective, John, uh, how can people resolve this? I mean, you've got some skill sets that you teach people, and you give them some problem solving skills. So now I don't want you to give away the farm here because I want people to work with you. However, can you give us some guidance? So what's the first step?
Yeah, absolutely. The first step is to understand the problem, right? And this feels very intuitive. But again, I feel like all our problems could be resolved by our words. And sometimes, all it takes is for me to help pull the intuitiveness out of someone, right? But you have to understand the problem.
Yeah.
And that is the first step because once you understand the problem, you understand the interplay between, cause and effect, right? How did certain effects manifest and what causes brought them there? What other
Mm,
types of effects might exist stemming from those causes? And what root causes within us? What traits and personality issues that we have? What internal motivations do we have would help a certain thing, a certain effect manifests, in
mm,
the world that could be harmful to somebody. And understanding that will help you brainstorm and articulate the right solutions that will target, you know, those 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 harms, right?
yeah,
Or it will help you target the underlying issues that help those harms manifest.
for sure.
So again, I'm a dirty lawyer, but dirty lawyers are taught to focus on what you do, what solutions you implement in order to negate the harm done, right?
Mm,
And to do that, you have to understand like what's going wrong, what's happening. That way, you're not focusing on the wrong things, right? The worst thing
Mm,
you can do when you hurt someone and you should be apologizing, right? For example, is you're focusing on yourself. You're focusing on woe is me, like I messed up, blah blah blah. No, get out of that here with that. Get out of here with your ego. Get out of here with your need for self-pity. Focus on what the salient solutions are. And
mm,
to do that, you have to understand like what went wrong. Having a firm grasp of what went wrong helps articulate, you know, how you will approach the problem. So that's a
excellent.
long
Yeah,
answer.
I love it. That's a great first step. I think really in any navigating in any relationship is
Hmm.
understanding yourself and understanding how your stuff shows up in that relationship, how your personality, your traits, uh your traumas, your issues, how all of that is showing up in your relationship. So that's great. That's wonderful. Now, so how can people work with you? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you could well please follow me on Instagram at the Negotiate Apology Project. You can also find me on Facebook as well under same name. You could look me up Jon Bui on LinkedIn if you want to connect via the professional social networking. If you want, my website is thenegotiateapology.com. That's where you could like book me to do a training for your organization. If you want to do coaching, if you need a public speaker, you could contact me for all that stuff on my website.
Excellent. Okay, now you mentioned before that you've got some upcoming workshops. This is a place where people can come and learn from you in a community, yeah?
Yeah, so I live in Tempe, Arizona, and I do workshops mostly around the valley, but I am doing my first Tucson event. Actually this Saturday. That's June 14th, 2025. I'll be doing the first apology workshop down in Tucson. It will be from 1 to 4 p.m. And I will provide you with that information, Stephanie, so you could link so you can post that up. I'm
Yep.
also doing one at the Better Business Bureau on July 10th. It'll be a lunch and learn. I will buy you food and teach you how to apologize.
Nice. Very cool. Okay. So, my very last question for all of my guests is what kind of inspiration would you like to leave our guests with today?
Ah, man, that's a great question. I love that. The inspiration I want to leave everyone is that bravery exists in all of us, right? And that's really what I want to help manifest in people. I want to help you manifest your bravery. Apologies make you seem like you feel like you're weak. There's a lot of, there's a big myth around the idea that people who apologize are weak people. Apology is an action for weak people. Apologizing means you're weak. That is not true at all. Apologizing means that you are strong. You're strong enough to own up to your actions. You are strong enough to move forward and act and do the right thing in the face of doing something that makes you physically and emotionally feel weak, right? Bravery and strength is not, the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing in spite of fear. So that's really what I want to manifest in people. I want to manifest their bravery. I want them to manifest the idea that I have what it takes for the right thing, no matter what my instincts are telling me. My disciplined, learned, and trained skills can overcome that instinctual fear.
Awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
Well, yeah. Now, is there anything else you'd like to share before we sign off?
Um, no, that's it. I mean,
Awesome.
definitely keep up with Stephanie and what she's building at, the integrative wellness. I think it's beautiful, bringing healers together. We can all use more healing. This world could use a little bit more healing, but it all starts with all of us individually, right? So,
For sure. Definitely. Thank you, John. Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Have a blessed day.
thank you. Take care, everybody.